Could you imagine what it would be like moving around every 4 years while growing up? Well, today I'm going to help you try to imagine that by explaining to you what it's like growing up as a military dependent. During this time, I'm going to explain to you what a military dependent is. I'm going to explain to you some of the good things about being a military dependent. I'm going to tell you some of the bad things about being a military dependent. I'm going to finish things off by telling you some of the lessons that I've learned growing up as a military dependent. So, to explain to you what it's like growing up as a military dependent, first I got to explain to you what that is. Now, the military has this long definition of what it is, but a short definition is a dependent is anybody that is taken care of by an active duty military member. Now, that could be a spouse or a child, or in some cases, mother, father, grandmother, grandfather. As long as you do the paperwork, they can be dependents. Now that you know what a dependent is, let's talk about some of the good things about being a dependent. The best thing about being a dependent is being able to travel. And what I mean by travel is travel from one location to another location, sometimes all the way on the other side of the country, and live in that new location. Experience new ways of living, because every place in the United States is different. We got different cultures from East Coast to West Coast, from North to South. Everybody does things a little bit differently. So being able to experience that growing up is an awesome thing. Not to mention getting from point A to point B, there's so much culture in between just some of the roadside attractions that you see while traveling down the interstates. Now, another form of travel you get to do as a military dependent is sometimes you get to go overseas. Now, that brings in a whole influx of new things to experience, new cultures, some of the sites that you've grown up reading in textbooks. You actually get to see some of those sites. That's the great thing about the travel. Another good thing about being a military dependent is some of the unique experiences you get, like meeting new people. You get real good at meeting new people because you have to meet new people every 4 years. So you get to meet people with all new experiences and ways of doing things, new games, all sorts of stuff growing up. Another benefit from being a military dependent is being a natural leader. When you get to a point where you have to move from place to place all the time, and you have to start over all the time, you get to the point where it's easy for you to actually take charge and take lead in a certain situation, let's say with people who don't get to move around. So that's some of the great things about it. Let's talk about some of the not so good things about growing up as a dependent. And I've said it in the good things, and one of that is starting over. Starting over is extremely hard, especially when you're younger. You get to leave all these friends that you spend a lot of time with, and you have to start all new routines. You have to make all new friends. You have to find new things to do, new places to go. It's extremely challenging, especially for the younger dependents. Older dependents, it's not such a big deal, but the younger dependents have a serious problem with it. Another bad thing is goodbyes get a little too easy. You get too used to saying goodbye to people, and it almost desensitizes you to the point where sometimes you don't make friends just because you don't want to say goodbye. So that is an awful thing, but some people actually see it as a good thing, but I'm leaning more toward bad. Another thing that you get is having to prove yourself constantly. Whenever you get to a new location, this is mainly for the older dependents. They get into a new school or a new situation or a new club, a new activity center, and have to prove themselves to the kids that are there on a regular basis. These kids are sitting there looking at them like, oh, this is the new kid. I wonder what they're like. These kids have to constantly prove themselves, and it's a lot of pressure on some of these teenagers. But that's enough of talking about some of the bad things. Let's go to some of the lessons that I've learned over the years about growing up as a military dependent. The first one is don't be shy. As a military dependent, you do not have the luxury of being shy. You have to get out there and you have to introduce yourself to as many people as you want to. Otherwise, you're going to grow up alone, and that's no fun. So get out there, say hi, introduce yourself, have conversations with strangers. It's not that hard. The first step is the hardest. Just say hi. All right. Another lesson learned is goodbyes are temporary. The military community is a small community. When one family moves, generally another family ends up seeing that same family at another base at some point in time. And with this day and age, social media has made it easier than ever for people to stay in touch with each other. Just a simple Facebook message, text message. Back in the day, we ended up having to sit there and write each other with pen and paper. I'm a little old, but that happens. But I mean, there's always ways to keep in touch with people. So goodbyes are temporary. And last thing I learned was join as many clubs as possible, or sports, depending on what you're into. Clubs give you the opportunity to meet new people and to experience things that you're good at and that you enjoy to do, and meet people that are into the same things as you are. It helps you become friends. It helps you make friends. Same thing with sports. It helps you meet people that have the same interest as you. It gives you a team feeling when you're in a sports team, to be part of a team. It helps you transition into a new location. But so that's what it's like growing up as a military dependent. Now, to give you a quick overview, I talked about what a military dependent is. I gave you a good definition of what it is. I also talked about some of the good things about growing up as a military dependent, such as the ability to travel and unique life experiences. I told you something about the not so good things, like starting over and goodbyes get a little too easy at some point, and having to prove yourself constantly. And finally, I explained to you some of the lessons that I've learned over the years as being a military dependent, such as don't be shy, goodbyes are temporary, and join clubs and sports. I hope you've enjoyed this speech, and y'all have a great evening.